Broadcasting from Orchard Park, New York,
and Boca Raton, Florida,
it's the Freight 360 podcast. From freight broker sales tips to sports talk, this podcast is all about helping you grow as a freight broker. We're your hosts, Nate Cross
and Benjamin Kowalski.
Let's talk freight.
All right, welcome back. Episode 301 of the Freight 360 podcast. This is going to be a sales-focused episode today, so we know this is typically the majority of you really enjoy this kind of content, so hopefully this will be a good one for you. But first, be sure to check out all of our other content. You've got the website, you've got YouTube, our Facebook group. Share us with your friends. Leave that review. I don't think we've asked for a podcast review in a while, so feel free and go over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you're listening, and leave us a 5-star review. Send us your questions. Check out the Freight Broker Basics course on the website as well if you're looking for some educational options. And what else here? Subscribe. Yeah. Ben, what's new, man? Besides your leaky roof.
Yeah. Do you know what I was going to tell you, though, is I found a couple new, I guess you call them like exercises. Anyway, I went down some
You're like the health and
hole.
wellness guy. I love it.
Yeah. I was listening to this podcast, and I can't remember the guy's name. But he was like, he was on Tim Ferriss, and he was talking, he was a, like world champion heavy lifter, but then he was also like a world champion in jiu-jitsu or martial arts. And the interesting conversation when he was just talking about was like how lots of traditional ways of strength training cause like immobility and like pain and then like damage or like injuries and stuff. And
Yeah.
like, I don't know, I'm old. That's like my biggest thing now is like just avoiding getting hurt because it takes like 6 months for anything to heal and to feel better.
Dude, I'm literally still like, I'm just getting back into the gym. Like I'm trying like at this point now to get back in after busting my knee up in May, I want to say it was.
That's why I was thinking about this, because I sent you that guy. I think his name's Dr. Baird, the guy who studies tendons, knees.
Yep.
And really interesting, because I mean, like, that's all he does. And he just talks about like very little bit of resistance, frequently helps strengthen them quicker. But this guy, he was talking about this training. Have you ever heard of rope flow?
Yes.
I never
like
heard of it.
It's like where it's not like where you're doing this. It's where they're
No.
like literally spinning it around
Yes.
though. Yeah, I've seen that.
Think jump rope, but
Yes.
you're
Yes.
not jumping over it. It's basically going around you or
Yep.
on either side, and you find like a rhythm, and it's less impact, but it's supposedly really good for like mobility and flexibility and spine and just working tendons and muscles, like the little ones you don't do very often, specifically in strength training and things. And like, I know it's because like I told you this like a couple years ago, I got like tennis elbow from lifting. I just like moved a bench or something wrong and it popped in my elbow. It took like a year for that thing to heal. So I was listening, this guy was like, they were talking about, and he was like, how quickly do you kind of see results or feel a difference? He's like, this is the only exercise that like I feel better immediately after I do it. And he's like, I've worked with athletes that see a difference like once or twice, like literally 2-3 minutes a day after 1 or 2 days start to feel like you're a little more balanced. You just feel better. And I used to swim, and it's just too hard to get in the pool for that long anymore. And I was like, oh, and it seemed like kind of fun and easy to do. I started doing it like 2 weeks ago, and both, like, one is, it is actually very enjoyable. And two, I do it as like a warm up, only for like a minute and a half or 2 minutes. And like, it really does, because it like works everything. It like warms up your whole body. I do it even before I stretch, because it gets all the blood flowing. And then when I go stretch, I can do my stretches so much deeper. It takes like half the time to stretch now when I do that first, because I'm like all warmed up and I've got all the blood flowing through my muscles. Definitely worth checking out. That and another guy, I ordered these, I think they're called the EMT clubs. This guy's named Weck, but that guy is the guy that I think invented rope flow, and he does lots of rehab, and he specifically has like a ton of strength training and flexibility stuff for golf and tennis, which are mostly what you and I do. So I ordered those two things last week, and I've been doing them all week. And like, to be honest, like it absolutely works. Like, I've gone to physical therapists, spent hours with them. It takes months, and I see like nothing. I've done some of this stuff for like a week or two, and I start to feel already a little less sore. I'm a little less sore when I wake up in the morning. I'm not as like achy. It was pretty significant, actually, for a very low effort.
Speaking of golf, I got to golf the Kiowa Ocean Course last week. I know I sent you a picture from out there. Dude, it was sweet, man. Expensive, but really, really cool. For anyone that lives in Charleston or has been there, like, awesome, beautiful area, especially in the summertime.
It looked gorgeous.
So yeah, it was nice, man. Your towels in the mail. Add your collection there.
I use my Pinehurst towel regularly. The last one you got me.
Nice. What else is there in like sport? Oh, Wimbledon's on. It's actually on in my office right now.
Oh, dude, thank you for reminding me because I'm super excited. I'll have that on all week.
I'm not a tennis guy, but I like sports, so I usually just throw on whatever's going on. So, news? Anything?
Not
Freight
really.
related?
I mean,
sign up for our newsletter. We push stuff out all the time. I did see there was kind of a decline in ocean shipping.
Yeah.
Kind of like a whiplash effect, it seemed like.
Not only that, decrease there, and like what everyone kind of expected. I saw this morning, I was reading that like online sales have taken a double-digit decline for the first time. I don't know, maybe it was ever. It's like basically everything we buy online, for sure, most part comes from another country. And I was reading this morning.
Tariff, like the tariff pause is like coming up next week.
Yeah.
Monday. So
online shopping sees biggest slowdown in over a decade. Online purchases for home delivery experience double-digit percentage year-over-year declines across major categories. Office supplies down 13%, sporting goods down 12%, cosmetics, furniture, home furnishings, large electronics all fell by 10%. So, yeah, I mean, like
I feel like my household's like been in the opposite direction. We've been buying so much crap lately, but hey, I guess I'm just one person sample size.
And it's just like, I mean, everyone's like, oh, the stock market's rallying. And I'm like, yeah, most of the stock market rallies around like, I think 7 stocks. The other 500 or 493 are all barely kind of hanging on. I think the economy's absolutely not faring very well. And
I mean, the market's done well overall.
Cautiously optimistic. I'm hoping things get better. Like, it just sucks not seeing any industries really doing well. I mean, like, it's anecdotal, but I'm like, I don't know of anybody or any industries that are like actually doing very well. Oh, news.
AI,
did you see the Genlogs video?
No.
Dude, really cool. In fact, one of the carriers that is in there, they did a video on anatomy of a cargo theft ring. It's on our Freight 360 page. You should, and everybody should absolutely watch this because actually the first carrier in there was related to a theft with somebody I was working with, and it was MTC Cargo. They stole a load out of California, and how that actually went down, and this is why it was really pretty interesting. So how this went down was the criminal offered to buy a trucking company. The trucking company owner gave him the logins before he got paid because the guy said, oh, I want to go and look at all your logins and check everything before I send you the check for whatever, 25 grand. And then that person was a criminal, changed all the logins, the phone numbers, and the names, and stole something like 10, 15 loads that day. But what was interesting was...
I feel like I've heard similar stories before.
Yes, and you have. But what was interesting about this one was they impersonated the carrier, meaning like it was sophisticated. Like they had the magnets and everything done and the decals put on their trucks so that they visually looked like the MC that they were running under, even though they never actually bought it or owned it. Okay. Stole somewhere between 10, 15 loads that day before everyone was kind of alerted as to what happened. The other interesting thing was Highway didn't pick up on the phone number or a few of these other things, and they kind of got through. Now, Highway later said that if you would have had Load Lock or their higher product, it should have caught it, but I don't know for sure if that was the case. But here's where it gets even more interesting.
So it flagged them for a recent change in FMCSA data or no?
It didn't flag anything because they never changed the FMCSA. They changed their phone numbers in Highway with the logins. They didn't change the FMCSA information. They changed the Highway information.
Gotcha.
And
yeah, like their verified contacts or whatever.
Yes. And I always said, well, it's against our policy that the owner gave the logins to somebody
That's
else.
true. That's against their terms of service.
Right. And I did ask them, I was like, well, don't you do MFA if somebody's logging in from a suspicious location or anything? And I guess at the time, maybe they weren't or they are now. I don't really know.
I get it all the time. Whenever I log in from somewhere else, it's going
So
to
do
email
I.
me a code.
That's what I said. I'm like,
just
if I
went
log
to
in
log
with
in
my
just a second, and it's like, give me your
Dude,
code.
if
from
I
your
put
email.
my VPN on, it asks me all the time to do this. So, but here's what's interesting about the GenLogs video is they have VIN level data now. So they've been able to find that truck that was impersonating or that was involved in that theft. And I had the driver's license too. So I sent them the driver's license. They not only found that VIN in that truck, but they found it in other thefts. So the same truck is popping up under all these different MCs to steal freight. And GenLogs can identify that specific power unit. And the whole video breaks down not only where they're also popping up, but that they're getting data ahead of these things to be able to predict it. And they've had shipper, I think, photos or videos of the guy that was the driver in the driver's license that was involved in the theft that I was aware of.
In freight, time is money, and efficiency is key. That's where Levity comes in. Imagine automating your email operations to do more with less effort. Levity connects directly to your inboxes, extracting vital information from emails and attachments in real time. It seamlessly integrates with your TMS, empowering you to quote faster, build loads more efficiently, and book more freight in less time. Whether it's incoming emails from shippers or carriers, Levity's got you covered. It understands any language, any format, and even interprets non-standard formatting. Visit levity.ai today to sign up and get started.
Tired of struggling to find accurate rates and the right carriers for your freight? With DAT1, you can access more than 500 million posted loads and trucks every year. That's 3 times more capacity than any other load board. Plus, their integrated freight management system makes it easy to cover loads 24/7. They have the most trusted network of carriers, brokers, and shippers in the country. You'll get real-time rates on every lane so you know exactly how much a shipment will cost before you commit to it. Plus, you get instant access to top bids from qualified carriers around the country. Get 10% off your first year of DAT1 when you visit the link in the show notes. And it's a really great breakdown. Shows exactly how they're doing this, what was occurring, how they're finding them. It's really, really good watch.
Interesting. I'll have to check it out. Yeah, I just saw it's on our LinkedIn page. Very cool. All right. Well, anyway, today we're gonna go through some sales stuff. So kind of the baseline topic here is why most people don't succeed in sales. And it was funny when I asked you this morning, like, hey, what do you think we should do for a topic? And you brought it up. Literally earlier this week, I was at my golf league, and my partner couldn't make it, so he had a sub playing for him. And it's another guy that I know, but we don't hang out as often, so we're kind of catching up. And I was talking about work, and he's like, let me ask you this. He's like, what's like the average freight broker make? Like, what can a broker earn? And I was like, it really just depends, man. I was like,
average.
If you're fresh out of college and you go through like a training program at a big company and you do okay, like you could make like maybe 60 grand around there and then grow from there. I said, I literally have someone at my company that made $1 million last year. I was like, and that's your massive spectrum, like everything in the middle. It just depends on how good you are at it, how well you can scale it. And he's like, dude, that's crazy. And I was like, yeah. I was like, because he's like, maybe I should do that. And I was like, look, I said, it's very high turnover. And I said, it's very, very sales focused. I said, people hear earning potential and in any sales, right? Whether it's solar, freight brokering, insurance, right? They hear that and they're like, oh, as long as I get a job in that industry, I'm going to kill it. And then the reality is like, no, there is a lot that goes into this. And I think we could definitely break down a lot of the reasons that folks don't succeed, because we've talked about the numbers in the past, like TQL, right? 1 out of 20 like is going to be there 2 years down the road after they
No,
start?
I think it's something like, and this is, I think, with most of the large companies, like
It's not
if
even
you
just
stay
TQL.
in,
Yeah, like any of the big W-2 models.
if you stay in sales and you don't take like an operations role, which I think is different, and I'll explain what I mean. It's like if you just stayed in sales, like out of 100 people, I think like 95 get washed out or leave in the first year. So there's like between probably 4 or 5 out of every 100, maybe even a little less. 3 out of every 100 make it to like their first year, and 1 or 2 stay beyond their second year. So it's like probably 4% make it through the first year and probably 2% the second year. Now there's another category where folks like really like logistics and are really good at booking trucks. They're really good at details. They like arranging freight. They like the hustle and bustle of it, the fast pacedness. Those folks will typically take like a larger salary and lower commission to stay in the industry, but they get washed out of sales. Sales is the highest risk, highest return, highest failure rate. It's why the 2 highest paid positions in the whole economy are CEO and top salesperson in every company, almost.
Yep. 100%. So I think you make a good point there too. Like it's not just that they get fired. It's like, hey, you're actually probably better fit over here. And that's why there's different positions and different roles within a company. Because you might be, like, we're going to talk about why people don't succeed in sales. But you might be really good at sales, but you are terrible at organization and, project management and things like that. Whereas somebody might not be good at the actual sales part of it, but be really organized, really detail oriented and all of that stuff. So that's where you see oftentimes your, when done correctly, right, your supervisor or your leadership is not necessarily your best salesperson. It's someone who's a really good leader and is good enough and understands sales and can do it, but they're not killing it in sales. They're really good at leading a team and leading an organization and having that long-term vision. Same thing with like carrier sales folks. They might be really good at talking with drivers and securing capacity, but you put them on the phone with the shipper, it's a very different conversation.
Very different job.
Yep. And same thing with an account rep, versus a carrier sales rep. Like you might be good at talking to a shipper. It's a very different conversation when you talk to the carrier. So one of the, and I'll just start off with one of, a random, these are in no order, and then I'll let you take it from there. But one of the things I think I've seen a lot of people that have gotten into sales because they hear sales and they've seen people in sales that do well, is expectation management, right? They just think, oh, I'm going to have this job, I'm going to do the job, and for that reason, I'm going to get the income and be happy.
So pause right there, because you know what I kept thinking of when we were going into this is there was a guy I met, this is probably 20 years ago, and same thing, sales, but he was in like financial advisory, right? So very similar type of failure rate, success rate, very high income potential, but very high washout rate. They had a shirt that he had made that basically said on the back of it, it said, we're willing to do what you won't so we can live like you can't. And it was kind of like a joke, and it was kind of, you know what I mean? Like it was like a bragging thing.
It's not terribly far off.
But it was pretty true, right? And I remember talking to him and he's like, yeah, he's like in our industry, like, dude, when you start, you make nothing. He's like, I made like 20 grand a year then. He was older than me. And he's like, not only that, he's like, but I'm working 14 hours a day, going out every night with clients that are telling me no over and over again, making 150 calls 5-6 days a week for a year and a half before I earned enough to basically not eat ramen noodles. He's like, that's basically the first year or two of my industry. But you do that 2-3 years and you succeed in that, like you can make a ton of money. Not saying that like that's the same as in freight brokerage, but like they're pretty similar.
Yeah. So Dave Ramsey has a quote that he says often. It's live like no one else, so later you can live like no one else. Like basically do what no one else wants to do now, just like the t-shirt, right? So later you can live and do the things that other people want and
one
won't
last
have.
quote on that. Someone else at Southwestern used to say this. He used to teach his kid this, and I love this. And his son was like 4th time, and it was just, if you do what's hard today, tomorrow will be easier. Do what's easy today, tomorrow is going to be harder. And if you really just boil it down to that, and like another book I read somewhere said the similar thing. It's like, if you were debating between 2 choices, the thing you probably are going to do is probably the thing you shouldn't, because your brain is almost always going to protect you and push you towards the easier thing. So if you just opt into doing the harder thing you don't want to every day, eventually you're going to get somewhere much farther than most.
One more quote, and I don't know who this is from, but it's very in line with that. It's choose your hard, right? Like, for example, it's hard living as a 300-pound obese person. It's also very hard to have the discipline to go on a diet and lose weight and do the exercise.
Only one has a regret. One has two pains.
Yes. So choose your hard. It's really hard to make 100 calls a day and face rejection and do that for a year and a half to build up a stable book of business. But it's also really hard to continuously fail at jobs because you're not applying yourself and you're never going to get the success that you want. Choose your hard. But back to expectation management. And this, a lot of times, I think it falls on the leadership, human resources, how the hiring process goes. And this is one of the things that I loved when I started in brokerage. When I left a trucking company, went to brokerage, what would become my boss had me, after an interview, he had me sit down in like the bullpen, right, around everyone else that was making calls. Like, sit next to them, listen to them, hear what the conversations are like, just talk to them in between calls about like what it's like day to day. And what's funny is, like, first impressions are sometimes terribly inaccurate, because the job, I was like, yeah, like, I'm like, I definitely want to do this, which I did, but like the actual people, the one guy was like, man, that guy's kind of an asshole. I like the job, but I don't really want to work with him. Ends up, the guy stood up in my wedding. Like, he came off a certain way, and then we became like really, really good friends. And to this day, like, he's in leadership at another brokerage, and as am I. We've both moved on from that one. But back to the whole point is, like, if you're going to hire somebody and you want good salespeople, make sure they really understand what they're getting into. And it doesn't have to be job shadowing, but I highly recommend it. That's why we always tell people, like, if you're thinking about getting into brokerage, like, sit down with someone who's doing the job, take them out to coffee, take them out to breakfast or lunch, and just like talk about what it's like to do the job. How does it impact their work-life balance and their family life, and how do they feel at the end of the day? What's like the hours and things like that. And also, like, talk about, it not even in just the shadowing part, but like in your interview process or your recruiting phase, like, talk through people's comfort level when it comes to like, hey, have you ever made a cold call before? Okay, you haven't? Okay, well, maybe we should do some mock calls and just kind of see how this goes. And it's not like we're grading you on it, but just to like see how it makes you feel, because we don't want to waste anybody's time.
So
right.
Great thing, and that reminded me of something. So two things that it reminded me of. One is, this is a company I used to work at. It's called Davison. They do like intellectual property invention stuff, but it's a sales job, right? And the thing I liked about their interview process is that's literally what they make you do. Except here's how they set it up. They put you in a cubicle. They give you a script, right? And it's really short, and it's not like you really need to know it. And they're just like, hey, here's 10 phone numbers, call these people. And like, that's like the first 10, 15 minutes of the interview. They just want to see, are you willing to do it? How much hesitancy do you have? And one of the phone numbers is actually the vice president at the company. And he answers the phone, and you don't know that, right? And he role plays through it just to kind of hear how you go. But I mean, the real value in that is to just see, like, how hesitant is somebody to do this? Because, like, the thing I always say to people that are getting into sales is, like, you learn your entire life that this is not something that is like socially acceptable. Like, you learn to not interrupt people. You don't walk over and just ask for things. You don't just go and try to like walk up to people that you don't know. Like, we teach our kids, like, you don't talk to strangers. Like, it's kind of ingrained in you that, like, it's not a natural thing, right? Yep. To do this. And then you've got to just start picking up the phone. And there's that other cliche. It's like, it's the 300-pound phone when you start, because it's so emotionally terrifying to start making those phone calls that, like,
you've seen the headlines. Freight fraud isn't going anywhere. But if you're a QuickScope customer, you're not seeing it in your business. QuickScope is a cutting-edge, load-level visibility tool that stops fraud before it starts, right where it happens. Inside the transaction, no noise, just results. With unlimited usage and by far the most cost-effective product on the market, QuickScope delivers real value without the bloated price tag or platform confusion. And here's the kicker. Version 2 of Quickscope drops this summer, packed with powerful new features and AI integrations that'll make your visibility game even stronger. Sign up today and you'll be locked in at today's pricing when version 2 goes live. Stop chasing fraud. Start stopping it. Visit quickscope.com. That's QUIKSKOPE and learn more.
There's a lot of hesitancy. And even for people that have done this like thousands of times, like it kind of really doesn't go away. You get into the habit of it, so you get a little used to it and then it gets easier. But if you stop for a month or two, starting again is like starting as if like you've never done this before. Like you got to get back into the rhythm, back into the habit. This isn't something that really comes second nature to most. I've met a few people that kind of just don't have that gear and just could do that anyway. But also to your point, like they're also the people that like I've hung out with and I like them and I could picture who these people are in my head. Like they're also kind of the people that like socially kind of make you feel uncomfortable in some ways because they just act in a certain way that is a little different than the norm and what people are comfortable. Like they'll just ask any question, say anything that comes to their mind. Like they just kind of don't have that hesitancy in them. And like that's, and I don't even think they're natural salespeople, but like that's really that psychological gear or whatever that makes it a little easier for some than others. Maybe it's you can call it extrovert, but I think it's a little different than that too.
Yeah, and even like once you do hire somebody and you're going through trying to figure out like, so let's say, you know, sales versus operations versus maybe a back office role. And this is not just for freight. This is in any organization. If someone's a great cultural fit for your company and you want to retain them, but you identify that they're not great at that position, going through early on the repetitions of whatever the job is that you identify, hey, they're not strong in this suit. The earlier you can do that, the better. It's going to save you time and headache and all that stuff and frustration. And we did this at the first brokerage I worked at was we would just do mock calls, right? Like we hire a new person and, you know, you start out with like, we try to make it as realistic, but not as like stressful as possible. So like, hey, one of us will go in another room. You'll sit at your desk, you'll call our phone. So you're not looking at me, right? It's going to simulate, you know, you've got the ability to hang up and like, just not have to still be looking at you. Right. And you just go through mock calls. And obviously like when you know it's a mock call, you're still going to treat it a little bit differently, but you go through repetition of like, the person on the other end that's kind of helping coach them up or like get them prepped or go through the reps is going to throw curveballs at them to prepare them for when it actually happens, right? So the first time you get an objection on the phone from a customer, hopefully you've already thought through that objection generically in some sort of training scenario environment beforehand, right? And we know in freight brokering, there's like 20 common, probably like 5 most common objections that customers will give us. Like, we're not adding anybody right now. It's customer routed. What else do we got? Oh, we only use carriers or asset-based carriers. Like you get like the standard ones that like you should know like how to bounce back at them, pivot, ask other questions, try to get to the root of it all. But if the first time a rep calls and someone's like, hey, we only use asset-based carriers. If their response is, okay, have a nice day. Like that's, you didn't progress at all. You didn't learn anything. You didn't move the needle at all. So I think, so outside of expectation management, that goes to your training piece, right? Like how is this person being onboarded, trained, guided, etc.
Well, and here's the other thing too, right? We talked a little bit about this, but I really do think mindset is the first thing and everything kind of comes from there in a certain way, right? Because like, and I say this at the end of every show, and like somebody said the other day that hears me say it, didn't realize why I said it. And I'm like, no, like literally everything you do in your life starts with whether or not you believe you can or you believe it's worth doing until you can do it, right? Like, if you don't, and you don't think you're going to succeed, you have almost no shot, right? Because as soon as it gets tough, your brain is going to convince you to do something else, right? You're going to jump into something else, right? And it's like, somebody said this to a client of mine that they reiterated to me yesterday. My client went and spoke at this event and she got all these referral partners. It was an event for people that would refer business in her industry, right? Okay. Got all these phone numbers, text all these people. But the person that set it up is kind of sells to the same group of people. And he said to her like, well, these people get bothered a lot and they get sold everything. So try not to bother them too much. And she asked me, she's like, so like, what should I do? Like, I don't want to be a pest and bother them. And I was like, well, let's take a beat for a second. I said, because first off, if you are thinking that you're bothering people, like you've already lost because you are not going to succeed in sales. That is the job. The job is to meet and touch lots of people over and over again until they know you, trust you, and like you and want to work with you. That is the thing you're trying to get towards. And if you perceive every time you go to work is I'm bothering people, then like that mindset is going to prevent you before you even start. Like you're already not going to win as far as I'm concerned, because that's what you're thinking every time you pick up the phone. You're not thinking I can help this person. You're not thinking I have a solution that could help this business. You're not thinking I believe in the product or service I'm selling. You're thinking I'm just calling to irritate people. That is a very long day. If you define your own job as I'm irritating people all day, like you're probably not going to win and you probably aren't going to stay there that long, right? And I genuinely think like that's why when people sell a product or a service that they believe in, or they believe they can help somebody better than their competitors, they are far more likely to succeed for a number of reasons. One, they're more convincing. Two, human beings are the best lie detectors. We can snuff out and smell BS, whether that person realizes they're doing it or not. You can hear and feel whether somebody is being genuine because your entire life you do that. And that comes through the phone. It comes when you see somebody in person. So you're not going to work with that person. You're not going to do business with a doctor that's like, oh, well, I'll come in. I'll see what I can do. I'm not really sure, but maybe we'll be able to find out what's wrong with you. You're probably going to call and schedule an appointment with someone else, right? It doesn't matter what that is.
Dude, so I was telling you off air, like I just traded my car and got a new car this week, and you know, like anyone who's gone through the car buying process, like you've probably had a good experience with one kind of person, and you could sniff out the bad ones right away. So like sales rep, we worked with her with my wife's car last year, so like, and it's a friend of a friend that we've met, so like very smooth process, no BS. But like I'm going to pick up the car and gotta go talk to the quote unquote finance manager, aka the guy trying to sell you the super expensive extended
Insurance.
warranty.
Yeah,
And
warranties.
like 2 seconds into it, I was like, oh my God, how do I get through this stupid PowerPoint? I mean, hey, if you sell cars or you're a finance manager out there, so be it.
Yeah.
I have just, I just take care of my vehicles, and I have never, the one time that I ever bought a super expensive extended warranty, I did not get my money's worth, and I never did it again. I've never had an issue, so I just don't buy them. But he's going through this whole thing with me, and I was like, look, man, I appreciate it. I said, but I'm not an extended warranty guy. And he's like, okay. He's like, we can just skip that part then. But it was like just the way he made me feel. It made it so awkward and uncomfortable. Just because like
comes across self-interested.
Oh
right?
yeah,
Like,
and it was almost like it was a
it.
hidden pitch. But I
Yes.
knew it was coming because that's how it always is when you buy a car. He goes through like, oh yeah, here, great truck you got. I'll just kind of show you some of like the expected maintenance costs over the years and blah blah blah. And then slowly I'm like, here it comes, and then he starts talking about
the
this
hammer.
platinum package, and I was like, you son of a bitch.
What's funny is, and it's a good one, because I remember the portion of mine, and it's funny because I was just telling you there's a screw in my tire right now. My wife's literally getting the tire fixed on our car. And when the guy was pitching the wheel and tire package, it's a warranty, right, to replace wheel and tire damage. And the way he pitched it to me was, oh, well, it's only $45 a month and it covers any of your tires and wheels for any damage. And like your wheels and tires are pretty expensive. And I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. And then I said, well, hey, let me ask you, how much is a rim and how much is a tire, right? And then he tells me what the number is. And I was like, well, how long is this term? Whether it's 3 years. And I just multiplied that number times the 3 years every month. And I was like, well, that warranty costs as much as replacing 3 wheels, right? And he goes, well, yeah. I'm like, I don't think I've ever damaged 1 wheel, let alone 3 inside of 3 years. Like, I kind of feel like that's probably not going to work in my favor. And then he tried to convince me that like the $35 or $45 a month is such a low number that I should pay it anyway. And that is somebody that's self-interested, right?
Yeah.
But if he would have approached me and said, hey, have you ever had any wheel damage? Have you ever hit any potholes? Like, and I may have, if I was one of those people that have done that once or twice, he might be like, well, hey, it's a little cheaper to just pay this a little bit every month than to end up with a $2,200 bill to replace a rim and a tire. Okay, now that is something that could be valuable to me if I'm in that category. But when you approach it by trying to convince me that $35 or whatever dollars a month is just better than me waiting to pay if something goes wrong, you can tell that that guy's just trying to sell it to you to make money, right? It's how you approach the situation.
100%. So like when we're talking about
qualifying is what that is, by the way.
Right.
Qualifying a prospect to see if they're in need of the service that you can sell them.
What this boils down to is it's like the way that you're communicating and how it comes across. Like you and I have both read Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference. And I highly recommend it if you're in sales or you're thinking about it. It's a great, even if you're not, it's a great book, FBI Negotiator. And it's all about communicating. And you can get the same message across by tweaking some of your words, and it's received. Like the context is still there, but it's received vastly different depending on how you word it, the tone of your voice, the inflections, all of that stuff, the volume of your voice, your energy, all of that. And I think that like we've all had like the not the robocall, like the telemarketing call that like is just so bad. They're reading off a script. They sound like a robot, and like you're debating in your head, like, am I rude if I hang up? Right? Because I don't want to get to the end of their pitch here. And we've probably all had that phone call where like you don't feel like you're being sold to, but like you are genuinely interested in what the person's like talking to you about. And that's the difference between someone who is really fine-tuned their communication, their ability to build rapport on a phone call versus someone who just says, what, people ask us, like, do you guys have a script? It's like, well, we don't want you to use a script for this exact reason. Anyway, I digress.
Because I'm going to pull on that thread a minute. But there's a guy worth looking at on LinkedIn for anybody. His name's Josh Braun. He actually lives right down the street from me. I didn't know this when I found him on LinkedIn. Great sales coach, puts out great content on a lot of the stuff we're talking about. Really good daily tips. He has some products too. I think like flashcards and things that help you like work on these skills that are really effective. I hadn't bought them recently, but I looked into them a few years ago, and really great stuff out there if you want to learn more. The other thing that I was thinking of is there's like those two really skill sets we're talking about, right? What is getting better at communication, right? Your communication skills, which is not just what you say, but how you say it, right? There's lots of studies that say like 90% of communication is not what you're actually saying, it's how you say it, whether it's your mannerisms, it's your tone of voice, it's your inflections, which is funny because remember when we copied my voice on 11 Labs to see how AI would do? Like it misses all the inflections, it misses all the tones of voice, even though they're in the wrong place. You feel that it is off, right?
Yep.
You can't, and then if you dig in, you can see, right? Those are the things that like you only, I feel, get better at practicing. Like I was interviewing a few people that had not been in sales that wanted a job yesterday. And they're like, well, what does the first couple of weeks look like? I'm like, you just got to keep falling off a bike. Like you've got to that's how you learn to ride a bike. It's not when it works. It's when you tip that you learn not to do that again. And little by little, you get a feel for how to ride it. It's the same with your verbal communication. What is your inflection? What kind of feedback do you get? Because like one of my favorite things I learned from my sales coach a long time ago is like, if you keep getting the same objection, you are saying something that is eliciting that objection. Yeah. All communication is a dance. You're doing something, they're doing something. And if you keep getting the same response, almost all the time, if you record your call and listen to what you said before that objection, you said something that piqued their guard, that made them go, wait a minute. And then they came up with an objection. So when everybody, especially new salespeople, go, well, I keep getting the same thing. This is just too hard, or like nobody wants our service. They never want to take the responsibility to look at their own behavior and then improve it, because like that is an opportunity. Getting the same objection over and over again is a good thing. It's like missing a free throw to the left every time. Okay, well now I know I consistently miss to the left.
Yep.
I got to move a little this way, right? That is why I feel like practicing this and making calls is the only way to get better at it, is necessary, and is how. I think secondly, reading books and content gives you better context to understand how you're doing what you're doing. It's not going to give you a blueprint to do this every time, but it's going to give you feedback so you know, like, oh, I keep doing this. I keep hearing this. Oh, this makes sense. That book is saying that, like, I am probably doing something like this. And then you change your tone a little bit every time. That's why when you work in they call it like a bullpen or in a sales pit, they put all those people together. Why? Is because you learn from each other. You pick up what the person next to you is saying. You hear their tone of voice. You're like, their opening's a little different. And without even realizing it, you just start to try what they're doing. And then you feel if that works. Then you try the person to the right of you. Then you hear the person over there. Then you try a little bit of that. And eventually you come up with your own personal mix of how you communicate that fits you and your personality, right? I think, super important. The other thing that I wanted to say is, like, we learned, I don't remember when I learned this, but it was probably within a few years of being married. But my best friend who I grew up with and learned sales with, and who's still at that company, right? Like, we used to use the sales techniques on our fiancés and wives, just because, like, it's a habit, right? Like, you do it all day at work for 8 or 9 hours a day. Like, we would do like closes, you do like different techniques that we would learn. And like, what I noticed was some arguments or disagreements I would still lose. But when I would replay it in my head, I'm like, no, like, if that was a sales call, like, I hit the inflections, I had the body language. I'm like, I did exactly what I would have done. And that would have worked 9 out of 10 times. Right. And then I realized, I'm like, what was different about it with my wife than in the sales call is she knows me better and she can feel my feelings better than a person that I don't know as well. And 100%. Then I realized that the solution wasn't just how I was delivering the message, but it was how I felt and what I believed. And when I shifted how my intent was, not just how I was saying what I was saying, we communicated more effectively and there was less disagreements. Because I'm like, oh, I'm saying this and I'm selling the shit out of it, but she isn't buying it at all and she's still mad. And then I realized, like, when I thought about my thoughts that were underneath what I was saying, I was like, oh, I didn't believe that at all. Like, I was just saying that to make them feel better, right? I tried to sell the shit out of it, but I didn't believe it. And then when I shifted my belief to believing what I was saying, like, there was no more disconnect and she could feel that disconnect. And it was like this great learning feedback where I'm like, oh my God, I get to practice this every day with, honestly, higher stakes. And more repetition, that made me realize how much your mindset matters in this context of sales, in everything you do. But when you realize there's lots of places to practice this in your daily life, we talk about like cashiers you talk to, a bartender, a waitress, interactions every day, a caddy at a golf course, wherever you're at, like, there's plenty of ways to develop this skill when you realize it's the same skill you're using everywhere else in your life.
So you actually just brought up two things I think were great. The cashier one and the caddy one, because these are literally two that I've done in the last week. And I recommend, I mean, not everyone's going to have a caddy every week, but like cashier gives you a really good, like the 2-minute conversation, right? The short, like real quick service level, but you're building some rapport conversation. The caddy one, much longer. Like when we golfed last week, you were required to have a caddy for the group, right? So it was like 4 or 5 hours. So we start off and it was like, you know, this kid's 24 years old. We're like, we don't really know him. And like, it's kind of like a strange,
just like a sales call.
By the end of it, Ben, we had this dude teeing off with us on the 17th and 18th hole. He's like, they just can't see me when we get up by the clubhouse. But like, we were able to like build rapport. We learned all about his background and, you know, what he wants to do with his life and with golf and all this stuff. And it's like, there's probably like he told us too. He's like, you guys are awesome. He's like, there are people that will come out here and they, you know, they don't want me to do anything except for read their putts for them. And then they'll yell at me if they didn't make the putt and blah, blah, blah. Yep. And it's like, that's the self-serving version versus the
that's great.
The opposite, right? So two different experiences. But yeah, like, but back to like because you're gonna have your short phone conversations. That's your, you know, do the reps by talking to the 7-Eleven when you're checking out with your Monster or Gatorade, whatever. Or if you're at your, you know, Publix or grocery store, wherever you shop for 2 minutes. If you're your longer conversations, maybe it's a meeting with a panel or a board member, or it's an in-person visit or it's whatever, because those conversations are very, very, very different. We actually had someone that commented on YouTube saying, like, for a topic idea was like, how about the do's and don'ts of an in-person customer visit? Because like they're very different than a phone call, because you're there for a lot longer. You're probably going to have time to start talking about things on a personal level that you never had the chance to before, and like dig deep into them. And there's definitely some areas to avoid or maybe lean into to help build rapport. But the practice and all this is like, I think, a huge reason why people don't do good at it, because they don't know where their weaknesses are. They're not getting that feedback. They're not putting the reps in, and they just kind of stay like at a plateau.
Here's the other question we get a lot, right? Is there's like graphs that'll show this. You can look up places that it's like, hey, as your knowledge goes up as you do a job longer, your confidence increases, and then you can sell more because you have more confidence, because you've done this more, you believe you can do it. So that comes across when you're selling, right? And I think that is true. But the common question we get is, I'm new. I don't know how to do everything yet. I don't feel confident in myself. How am I supposed to sell, right? And I think that's a great question, right? And I think the short answer is, you don't have to know everything to be confident in your ability to work harder than your competition. And I think that is more important than knowing everything and being lazy. Just leave it at that, right? Because if you are picking up the phone and calling somebody, and I don't care if you've never moved a load before, but you believe that you are willing to do more to help this customer than anybody else that's working with them, that is confidence is sufficient to get them to work with you. And most people will appreciate that if you're even honest. Like, look, hey, just been in the industry a little bit, but I can assure you that I will be available 24/7 if you call me and you need anything. I will work harder than anybody else you're currently working with to find you what you need, to make sure you're getting what I tell you you're getting. And I will be the first person to tell you if there's a mistake or I can't. I will be honest, direct, and upfront with you if that's the case, right? Yeah. That is confidence without knowledge. And that to me is way more valuable than the person that has done this 10 years but is too lazy to work as hard as the person next to them.
I remember one of my first, actually it was my first sales job ever, was at Best Buy selling. I started in home theater, so like TVs and stuff like that, and shadowed for like the first week, listening to how the guys on the floor would like talk to customers and answer questions and pitch certain things. And I remember like after a week, the guy that was training was like, he's like, Nate, he's like, you're ready. You're going to take this next guy. And I was like, I'm not ready yet. He's like, you're ready. He's like, just remember, you don't have to know everything. You just have to be confident that you can get them an answer, and, just know the questions to ask, and whatever you don't know, like, we'll be able to help you out. So he just kind of like threw me in there, and I was like, you're right. Like, you have to start, and you have to grow from that starting point. And was within like, and we weren't commission based at Best Buy. We did get like, they did like a quarterly profit sharing based on your store, I think. But like within a month or so, like I remember I put together like this $25,000 home theater deal for this guy that just moved into Buffalo from DC. And it was like badass TV, surround sound system and receiver, top of the line, like cabling and wireless everything. And, like we did the install, calibration, all the warranties, like everything on it, right? Because the guy was just like, you really seem to know what you're talking about. And like, I trust, I trust what you're telling me. So, and I mean, I didn't like screw him on anything. I set him with a sick setup for his house.
Which is what he came in for.
But that was literally in a period of like probably 4 or 6 weeks, I was able to transition there from being afraid to have my first conversation with a customer that's looking to buy a standard TV to some dude that's got deep pockets trying to set up his new house. So, and you have to start somewhere and, make the adjustments from there.
That same line, I still remember my mentor at my first job. I was working at a bank, and same thing, like we're going to go out and meet customers, going to go start talking to people on our own. And I remember him sitting me down and saying the same thing. He goes, listen, people will ask you questions you don't know the answer to. He said, first, the worst thing you can do is make some shit up.
Lie, yeah.
The worst thing you can do is pretend like you know and tell them something you don't, right? He's like, I'm going to give you a line that will bail you out of this in every scenario. That's a great question. I want to make sure I give you accurate information. Let me go run that down. Let me go confirm that. Let me go check on that and see, and I'll get right back to you, and then write it down.
Yep. I had the same, like literally in the military, they teach us the same thing. Like if you're giving a briefing and the boss asks you a question you don't know the answer to, don't lie. Don't say, I don't know. Say, basically, I don't know, but I will find out and get back to you. So some variation of that. The one other, so I don't want to run out of time here. The one other thing I wanted to hit on, at least briefly, and this applies to all industries, but I'll hit on freight specifically, is if you don't understand your environment, like your market or the operating environment that you're in, and you're not staying up to date with it, that can get you into trouble too in sales. So like, especially if you're brand new and you don't take an interest in learning about it. So like, let's say it's solar and you don't know where, or you don't understand what the rebates are based on where you're located. If there's a state rebate or the federal rebate. If it's selling houses and you don't understand the mortgage interest rate environment, or if it's freight brokering and you don't understand what the spot market's like versus, where's capacity tight? What kind of regulations are impacting us right now? Where have storms impacted certain parts of the state or the country, right? So not only does knowing that stuff help you understand why things are the way they are, it helps you bring up conversations and discussion points to make your conversations flow easier. So like if we know that capacity has been super tight outbound in a certain city and you're prospecting business there, which is a great place to prospect and for a great reason, that could be really your discussion point. Like, hey, I've been talking to a lot of folks who having a really tough time getting reefer capacity out of your area. Like I've already laser focused the point of the conversation, and it's not like it's a magic line where it's every single time they're gonna be like, yes, please find me a truck. But at least like you're hitting on a point that, or you're hitting on an area of the conversation that is more likely than not relevant to that person. So just generically speaking, take an interest, like whether it's DAT has great market insights. They have great reporting on their analytics tool. You've got newsletters, right? You've got our newsletter, Freight Waves. You've got all Freight Caviar, whether or not they're meme based or all factual. Just understanding what's going on out there is going to be massively important to help you succeed.
It reminds me, right? I'll kind of end it with this. Like the things you shouldn't do is start a cold call by telling them everything about you and everything you can do without knowing anything about them, right? So like you get a cold call and somebody's like, hey, this is Jimmy from HVAC service. We can handle indoor, outdoor. We can replace your units. We can service your air ducts and we can come out and clean them. I want to respond to that with, hey, this is Ben Kowalski. I work at a freight brokerage. We can handle your FTL, LTL, drayage, and international. And he's going to be like, well, why is that relevant? And we're like, I don't know. Why is what you just told me relevant, right? Like, and like, you don't know anything about me. You're just calling me, telling me everything you can do without asking me whether or not any of these things matter to me right now. And it's like in any scenario, that sounds super awkward. Like if somebody just introduced himself, hey, I'm Nate the baker, and we can make buns, rolls, this, and like, okay, but like, I don't need bread right now, but I'm glad you can make cakes and cupcakes.
Pastries, yeah. We had a guy I used to work with that. It was funny because the rest of us, when we would hear him do this, we would all like look at each other and chuckle. He would go through and give this like spiel of the history of the company, and we're all like,
we've been in business since
nobody cares what year we were founded in and who founded the company. But like again, like had we not given him the feedback on it, he probably never would have adjusted course. But yeah, so anyway,
we're a family-owned business. We've been in business for 40 years, and
well, so I will tell you this: like there is a time and place to go through some of that, some of those details, but not right off the pitch. So like for example, when it comes to like like at Pierce, we're agent based. So like a big part of what we deal with is people that are considering coming to our company, right? Like so we have to vet these people out. And then a lot of times you have to make them feel comfortable that, hey, we're actually a great company to partner with.
You're addressing a risk. You're preempting an objection. Hey, yes. I might be worried that Pierce is a fly-by-night agent program that if I bring my customers over, you guys are going to disappear in a year and a half, right?
Yep.
That's the risk that you're going to address.
So when somebody reaches out and wants to talk about like, hey, what would it look like to come over to your company? I usually start off, and this is, you can tweak this however you want, and it's going to sound different when you're selling to a customer or a shipper, but I'm usually like, hey, what made you decide to reach out, right? Like, very basic. It's not like, hey, thanks for reaching out. Our company was founded in 1981. But when we get further into a conversation, and this will apply to your, selling as from a brokerage to a shipper, is if they're showing signs that like, hey, I want stability. Like, stability is important to me in a relationship. Well, look, we've been doing this for 30 years now. We know what works. We know what doesn't work, and that can apply when you're selling to a shipper, right? And they're like, if they're worried that like you're going to go out of business, not pay a carrier, and then that carrier's going to end up coming back to them looking for a freight bill to be paid. Like even like TQL, right? We've been around 25. I don't know how many years TQL's been around. Like, we've been around a long time. We're a very large company. We've got a lot of depth across the board. So you don't start off with that, but it's a reassurance to somebody if you're sensing that that's a potential fear of theirs. So, but yeah, I guess you could also sum that up with know when to say certain things and when not to say certain things. So
yeah, and it's like you can sum that up with that other cliche. It's like God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them proportionately, right? Like, you should be listening twice as much as you're talking, and not listening to respond, but listening to understand, right? And they're very different. When you're just sitting there thinking about the next thing you're going to say while someone else is talking, you're listening to respond. When you're listening to understand what you're communicating to me, then I can respond with something that is relevant to the thing you're thinking of, right? It really is. Otherwise, like, you're not really communicating. You're just talking at each other, right? You might as well be having a monologue by yourself at somebody else giving another speech. And then at the end, you both walk away not learning anything about the other person. Like, that is not sales. That's not even communication.
100%. All right. Well, cool. Good episode. We got into some good points there. Hopefully you guys can get some good takeaways. Let us know what you think in the comments or review, or send us a message, and let us know some future topics that you'd like us to talk about. But Ben, any final thoughts here?
Whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right.
And until next time, go Bill.
That wraps up this episode of Freight 360. Check out the show notes for links to anything that we've referenced on this episode. And make sure to visit us online at freight360.net to see our entire library of episodes, videos, blogs, and more.
And make sure to check us out on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel for daily and weekly tips and content. And if you'd like your question answered on the show, fill out the Contact Us form on our site, and we'll see you next week.